What is it that Indian brands aren't doing right in that front? What do you think we need to do? As you said, we have a long way to go. So what do we really need to do to create our imprint globally?
To answer this question, Ikshita, let me break this down. Let's look at the market in two parts. The luxury market being the first, since I have a certain opinion of it. Globally, the luxury market has become this multi-billion-dollar play. And this is largely because of the effort of two individuals, François Pinault and Bernard Arnault. Their two companies, LVMH and PPR, which is now called Kering. And of course, there was Johann Rupert, who owns the Richemont Group. Back in the 1970s, 80s, these are the companies that really started surging forth in terms of importance and gaining traction. They started buying out a lot of these legacy brands that were dying at the time, pumped in a lot of money, made sure that the quality was back up in play. And it was from this perspective that the luxury market is now a thriving industry. If you look at what's happening in India right now, there's a very fascinating parallel that's playing out. You've got Mr. Ambani and Mr. Birla, who are building very, very similar models, where they're in one manner bringing all these brands to India, but they're also seeding a number of very prominent designers, as well as fledgling young brands, to become power players. So I think the luxury market is going to be explosive over the following decade in the Indian context. We are on the cusp, I think, of something very, very big. So the luxury side, I think, is already moving in the right direction. When it comes to the second part, when it comes to the mid markets and the low markets, and this is where, as Indians, because we're such a mass market, I think we really need to create far greater impetus. I mean, I rue the fact that we don't have more mainstream brands. If you consider the fact that outside of these 3 or 4 brands that we speak of, the Sabyasachis and the Royal Enfields, there aren't very many other players. It's unfortunate, in this day and age for us not to have that. Think about yoga. Yoga is something that India has owned forever. Why is it that Lululemon was started by a Canadian entrepreneur, and became a billionaire on the back of that? Lululemon, for those who are perhaps not familiar, is an athleisure wear that sort of focuses on, yoga. Why is it that some, hosiery giant from Hoshiarpur did not start that enterprise, right? So these are questions I think brand custodians, people who have the wherewithal to create energetic enterprises, need to think very seriously about.
We've spoken about India going global, global brands coming to India. It's seen a boom, hasn't it? I mean, I'm not an expert, but if you were to just look at it from my perspective, from a layman's perspective, you look at the roads, you see a lot more luxury cars, you see people around you with a lot more luxury belongings. Is it a sense of brand value that people have kind of inculcated now? Or is it that there's more exposure, more options that's available now in the market here?
Akshita, it's a blend of various factors. I think first and foremost, it's comfort with currency. It comes down to understanding that we are a very young nation. 1947 wasn't that far back. The generations that come after any cataclysm of this sort will be predominantly occupied with securing their coffers. And Indians by nature are very conservative. They tend to think about the roti kapda makan model. Let's get all of those acts in order, and everything else follows. We have now reached a point where we have minted several billionaires, several millionaires, and that reflects in this consumerism, in these behaviors that play out by way of luxury cars, that play out by way of luxury condominiums. When you consider the real estate market in India, it's perhaps the richest in the world. For the amount that I'd pay for a penthouse in DLF, I could have a sprawling villa in Malibu or in any exotic part of the world. So we are spending, and that's now percolating down through social strata. You're seeing a number of families that otherwise would not think twice about spending on maybe a wedding, also saying, let's go out and buy that Bentley. Let's go out and buy that Goyard handbag. So it's just following a natural turn. There's nothing.
Priorities have changed essentially, and how you spend your money.
I've not changed at all. I still do exactly what I've always done. I'm not the most logical person, in this battle of heart versus mind. In my case, the heart has always led the way. And from the minute that I had any money in my account, I started traveling. And that exposure, I think, really fed to my understanding of how the world operates. So no, I'm the wrong person to ask that question.
If you look at what's really happening with these legacy brands, with these luxury brands, there's, of course, a very clear consumer base that they have, and a very loyal one at that. There are some who are always shifting away, citing that they feel taken for granted in a sense. Do you think that's a real feeling?
Well, to understand the essence of a brand, Akshita, let me sort of answer this in a slightly different way. I sit before you not merely as myself. I am the bearer of the legacies of my foremothers and forefathers. I perhaps have a trace of the elegance of my maternal great-great-grandmother. I perhaps have the wit of my paternal grandfather. Human beings who I've never met, but who live on through me. I certainly hope that my great-grandchildren carry forward my dashing good looks and my immense modesty. But the point I'm making here is every brand has a DNA, which comes by virtue of the founder having a very clear vision, which over the decades and perhaps centuries can get diluted completely. We spoke earlier of how trying to appeal to a new audience is challenging. It's not the easiest thing to do. When you think about a brand that's been around for 160 years, how does it speak to that 18-year-old who's going to make a buying decision because of some reel that he's seen some influencer post? I think the most powerful brands don't really bend. A Brunello Cucinelli, a Goyard, a Patek Philippe, they won't pander necessarily to the shifting tides of the water or the winds. They will stay firm and forthright with what their true essence is. And they'll allow people to mature to the level of understanding and appreciating what they stand for. So it's very important to understand that when a brand starts doing this too often, too easily, it would perhaps be the equivalent of a midlife crisis. It's the yellow Ferrari. A red Ferrari and an uncle trying to squeeze into it is okay, but a yellow Ferrari is disgraceful. So yeah.
We've spoken of luxury brands. As I said, he's also the founder of India Art Investor. So I want at the end of this just to ask you a few questions on that. What would you recommend people invest in, modern art or contemporary art?
Well, it depends on what your inclinations are. More often than not, contemporary art is the way to go. But when it comes to a younger audience, the millennials, they will only gravitate to art of their time. So it's always important to buy what your heart leaps at. Don't buy things because I'm telling you because I'm supposed to be an expert. Experts know nothing. It's an essential facet to always remember that you're going to be living with that art. You're going to be waking up to it. You're going to go to bed to it. It's going to become an integral part of your existence. So buy what appeals to you. For the predominant wave right now, contemporary art is where it's at. But I make my bread and butter from modern art, so please go out and buy a lot of modern art.